Hello learners, welcome to this unit on information communication technologies for development communication. I will be giving you an introduction, and what we will cover is the dynamic concept of development that seeks behavior change, inadequacy of the means of mass communications, and the explosion of ICTs, which is information communication technologies, right? Role of information and communication technology applications in social impact areas such as health, education, women's empowerment, etc. And in those we will be taking specific case studies of community radio and its strategic reach, IVRS and its application in giving voice to the community, participatory filmmaking for knowledge absorption, and a wide range of digital tools available for supporting farmers. But mind you, this is not an exhaustive list of ICTs. They are developing and evolving as we speak. So first of all, what is development? Traditionally, we've all seen development as essentially maximizing the production of goods and services available in a country, and lack of it is defined as underdevelopment. And we are all supposed to be developing, right? This has remained the dominant paradigm for a long time, but there are obvious limitations. Can you see them? This definition did not take into account the de-development, the international structures which fostered underdevelopment and continue to do so, such as colonialism and now unfair trade practices. Secondly, it does not take into account the resistance offered by social structures such as caste and patriarchy within our own societies. So there is a challenge from outside and there is a challenge from within, but there are far more serious challenges today. First of all, a very serious limit which is called the carrying capacity of the planet Earth, which has been reached already. And sustainable development is supposed to be the answer to the problem that we are facing. And does that mean more equity rather than growth? So let us examine that. So what are we seeking? We are seeking behavior change. You have studied behavior change in Unit 10. So there you must have found that experts are of the opinion that proper use of communication can foster the pace and process of development. So both pace and process, which means we can get faster development and better development. This is what is assumed. So communication becomes the process of affecting or influencing behavior of individuals or groups towards certain desired goals and objectives. Does it mean it also helps in challenging the status quo within and demanding rights? The change in behavior as desired is the test of the effectiveness of both the message and the means, which means what we are trying to say and the means of communication that we are trying to employ. Now, with the paradigm shift in favor of ICTs, there is a merging of the two. This is a very important point. I hope you will be able to absorb this concept of the merging of the message with the means. You see, with participatory methodology, the message is created along with the process when the means are employed with the people, the community, and therefore it becomes far more effective. Quite simply stated, so if there is a methodology which is top down, which only tells you what to do, compared with the methodology which participates with you to create a message, which would be more effective? Obviously, the one in which you had your say. Therefore, the paradigm shift in the favor of ICTs is definitely here to stay. Now let's compare other media versus the ICTs. So first of all, there is direct means of communication, like I'm speaking to you. Of course, I'm not speaking to you directly, but through a video, but that's okay. A direct means of communication is effective, but has obvious limitations. First of all, it is literacy agnostic, so we can have conversations. We can have cultural performances which can be very effective, which can be folk theatre, music, etc. Then there is visual, which is like graffiti, posters, etc. Then there is print media, which is one of the most obvious things of communication, but it has limitations with poor literacy levels and language barriers. And this is also true of the underserved population, for example, women, Adivasis, Dalits, who have, and minorities who have poorer literacy levels, right? Then there is the broadcast media. Now, this was called a magic multiplier. Now, in the 60s and the 80s, a lot was set in store by it. It saw huge investments in research, resource, and highly trained personnel, all of which you have studied in Unit 9. There is a lot of detail there. Please go back to it if you need to, because it was believed that this magic multiplier or the broadcast media had an exceptional power to change human behavior. Now, barring a few notable exceptions, the impact is not noticeable since the Green Revolution. We feel that radio lost its importance and got subsumed by the mass expansion of television, and then later, television, despite various attempts, is seen as a source of entertainment or at best news, right? A study has recently revealed that the sum total of television's development impact nowhere near expectation, and that it had not been consistently beneficial to national education or agriculture. So then comes the ICT revolution. See, the top-down nature of mass media gave it a huge glamour quotient. So there were stars, movie stars, television stars, even news readers were considered stars, right? But the impact is not predictable. Then, of course, we have the profit-oriented mass media, which is blamed for objectification of women and normalizing of crime and violence, right? Then there is development media, and the very perception of this media is that it is boring, it is preachy, it has irrelevant or uninspiring content, right? Remember the documentaries before the movies? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Now, ICD is a new paradigm which has multiple sources of information and knowledge sharing. There is not one source, right? There is agility across various platforms of ICTs. There is no language barrier and therefore also no borders, national or international. The technology assessment of today's new media requires measures that more closely reflect their fundamentally social, interactive, performative and participatory character. Please remember this, that this new paradigm of ICTs is fundamentally social, interactive, performative and participatory, which means you and I and everybody is far more equal in this new paradigm. So therefore, it has had its beneficial impact in various sectors. So let's see first ICT and agriculture. Farmers approach private input dealers, seed and pesticide suppliers and middlemen for information traditionally, right? They have no other source, right? Sources that they can trust. But they are also known to trust government agencies. They are considered highly reliable due to their technical know-how and their lack of personal agenda, and they are not trying to sell goods, right? It's also believed that when agriculture is deemed profitable, farmers are proactive. It means if they are encouraged to feel that they can make a good livelihood, then they seek up-to-date and diverse kinds of information from social media. And they use a variety of digital media which has a huge impact on the sector. We will be examining this in great detail in one of the videos which is following. And very importantly, ICT can become a great equalizer for men and women farmers, because ICT can reach inside homes and therefore can overcome the public inhibition, if any, that women farmers may have. Now, we will see the sector of health, and nutrition security. Several studies show a positive and significant impact of ICT on population health and recommend that healthcare programs need to focus on policies which foster digital inclusion, especially of women and girls. We all know that women and girls have less access to digital media, also that the needs of women and girls is much higher and their status, their health status is much lower in any given population. Secondly, nutrition security was better demonstrated and the knowledge was better absorbed by using participatory films that took local sensitivities and challenges into consideration, especially in tribal areas that are routinely marginalized in mass media, right? Which means using their language, their food habits and understanding how to create nutrition security around that. We will be studying this in greater detail in a separate video. Now, the pandemic that we are all familiar with very clearly demonstrated the need for ICTs when information needed to be constantly updated as the virus evolved, because we were getting newer and newer information as scientists were studying it and they were telling us better precautions. Lastly, giving expert advice at remote locations has become one of the most satisfying uses of ICTs in recent times. There are several applications which allow doctors to examine patients in rural areas, patients who would have otherwise had no access to such expert treatment. This is a very important aspect of ICTs, as we know that Asia has more than 50 million migrant workers, particularly vulnerable as they have issues proving identity both at source and destination. It's interesting to know that more than half of these are women. A large number of them are domestic workers, because that is the single largest employment category available for women. And then even the informal sector workers, do you know that more than 90%, or some people even say as much as 95% of workers in the country are informal sector workers who are forced to accept unfair conditions. ICTs collectively help to progress labor rights. As new information communication technology becomes more accessible, organizations and unions have begun to tap into the potential of these modern methodologies. We will be studying interactive voice response systems, or IVRS was one such method which was used to help workers, especially the migrant workers, during the recent pandemic. ICTs and education is an obvious choice, and digital divide when crossed helps cross other divides such as literacy and education. You understand digital divide, which is people who have access to digital means. Repeat. ICTs and education is an obvious sector. Now, digital divide is something which is a term which denotes the difference between people who have digital access to the network and methodologies and people who don't. There are a lot of countries who feel that digital divide when crossed actually helps to close other divides such as literacy and education. Now, recently we suffered in the Indian education system an irreversible learning crisis amidst the pandemic. The school closure across the country has impacted everyone's learning experience, and hence the urgency to address ICT needs. You all know that children who had access to online devices were able to continue their learning, whereas children who did not have had a huge break in their learning experiences, and that really sets them back. Some of the common educational applications of ICT include one laptop per child. This was an ambitious effort, but it is very effective if we are able to create this campaign. Then there are e-readers, which are electronic devices that can hold hundreds of books in digital form, and they are increasingly utilized in the delivery of reading materials, and they can expand the curriculum. Then the flipped classroom model, what we were just speaking about, which involves lectures from remote location, something like this, what we are doing just now, and practice via computer guided instructions and interactive learning activities in class. And of course, ICTs also help in teachers' professional development and gives them professional opportunities to increase their ability to use ICTs. But most of all, what is needed is that regulators bring down the prohibitive cost of broadband for all of this to succeed. Now let's come to one of the heart of the matters, which is gender equality, and some of the goals of using ICTs identified by the UN Women are making education accessible to women and girls, as we were just discussing, and they believe, the UN Women believes, it has very large impact on improved quality, but not only if other variables are in place, which means that ICTs will not substitute the actual physical infrastructure which is needed for education. Secondly, to end violence against women, many mobile phone apps can report safety risks. Then there are helplines to access services for survivors of gender-based violence, which are becoming very popular every day. ICTs can also help to advance women's leadership and their participation. Training for women on how to run for office and get elected is available online. ICTs also help enhance women's economic empowerment through enterprise development, financial inclusion and skill training. Combined with on-ground actors such as community radio, which we will be studying little later in detail, we see how Kumaon Wani working with Lok Chetna Manch achieved the following impact. First, the women questioned their lack of land rights and their recognition as farmers in the area of their work, and the men accepted the disproportionate burden of work on women. These are very important achievements. Finally, in conclusion, we believe that information and communication technologies are fast developing and evolving as we speak, and they have to, as their role is becoming indispensable to us, especially given the criticality of the sustainable development goals that need to be achieved and the looming disasters spurred by climate change. It is imperative that we give much larger space to understanding them and use their participatory potential to challenge status quo that inhibits change, challenge the structures that prevent justice and equity, and habits that humanity must jettison if human civilization has to survive on Earth.
Thank you so much.